Hey, welcome back. Phil Valentine with you. Westwood 1-800-618-PHIL. That's 1-800-618-7445. Can Donald Trump solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And if so, will he get a Nobel Peace Prize? Doubtful. But he may be able to solve the problem nonetheless. Dr. Michael Makovsky, former Pentagon official and CEO of the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America, is here to chat with us about that. Doctor, how are you?
Hi. Great. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. This is a whirlwind trip that even the staunchest critics of Trump were thinking that he was going to blow this. He seems to have hit a home run with everybody. I mean, he seems to be the toast of the Middle East.
Yes, I agree. Look, I think it was a very smart move, and it was a surprising move in many ways that President Trump made his first foreign visit to first Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, then Jerusalem. And I think it was very important because it set a very important tone for his administration and also a distinction from the last one, that our traditional friends are our friends, and Islamic extremism, particularly the Iranian version, they're enemies, and we need to work together against that enemy.
And that's what he said there's no way these folks are going to get the nuclear bomb. So what does that change the dynamic? Because people are saying, well, it changes the whole Iran deal, but the deal was, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, the Obama deal was not that they get the bomb, that they get to develop nuclear power, and we all know that's not what they're doing. They don't need any. I mean, they got enough oil to burn for the rest of eternity. So this is about the nuclear weapon. But how do we distinguish between the two, whether somebody is developing nuclear power or nuclear weapon?
No, the deal actually, I mean, you're right. There's parts of the deal that do involve nuclear power, but effectively it enabled the Iranians to develop their nuclear program, and really all restrictions on their nuclear program, and everyone knows why they're building it, are going to go away no long after
in 5 years.
15 years.
It was 15 years.
15 years after the deal was set. So that's 13 years from now. But actually, a lot of bad stuff is already going to be starting in about 5 years from now, when they could do more intensive R&D on advanced components of a nuclear weapon.
All right. If that's the case, and Trump says that they're not going to get the nuclear weapon, how do we stop them from doing that?
Okay. There are a few things. First of all, I think what he's doing right now is very important. I think one of the elements is to restore or to lead from, not behind, but from the front, an anti-Iran coalition, and I think going to Saudi Arabia and Israel is an important part of that, making clear that we're going to stand together on that. I think the Israelis and the Saudis and other Sunni Arabs leaders were quietly working together because they felt abandoned by President Obama, and now you have a president who wants to bring them together, and work together with them against Iran. So that's very important. I think they are doing a policy review in the Trump administration, so they don't really have a clear policy yet. But I think a couple of things have to do with, actually, I'll surprise you, what I'll say is as important as the nuclear issue is, and it's really important, they have to focus on the non-nuclear issues. That means pushing back against the Iranians in the region. That means sinking our ships if they harass them in the Persian Gulf. We have to signal to the Iranians that there's a new sheriff in town, and we're going to push back against them. And also, we're going to make sure that they don't develop ballistic missiles.
Yeah, and when you say pushing back, though, I mean, what does that look like? Will we go in, and if we find out where their facilities are, where they're developing nuclear weapons, we take them out?
Well, I wouldn't do that yet. If we find that that's the case, we're going to have to do it. But I think there are things. President Obama made two big mistakes with Iran. One, he embraced them as a partner, and two, he focused only on the nuclear issue and ignored all their other destabilizing activities. And what I think President Trump needs to do, and I think he's starting to do that, is to focus on the non-nuclear elements, which means pushing back against them in Syria, supporting the Saudis to push back against the Iranians in Yemen, supporting our allies, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Israelis, and the Saudis, and he's doing that. He's got to look like he's got to show that he's tough, which he hasn't really done except for that one strike in Syria. And I would also weaken the Iranian influence in the region, and that means weaken the sway of the pro-Tehran capital. That means Damascus, Baghdad and Beirut. And I would actually work this more radical, but I would try to weaken those capitals who are under the sway of Iran, including that means supporting an independent Kurdish state in Iraq.
All right. Is there a chance that he gets this Israeli-Palestinian conflict settled, or is that just? I mean, this is something that's been raging for a long, long time. Is there a chance that Trump is able to help solve that?
I think he can move it along. I think President Obama really moved it backwards, and I think President Trump can move it along as long as he plays small ball. If he says, and he said this, and this makes me concerned, I could set a deal, this is the big deal, we could get it done, I think that's the wrong attitude. I think if he talks about little things that we could do, not insignificant, but smaller things that we could do to bring the parties together, I think that would be positive. That means, for instance, getting the Palestinians to stop inciting and financially supporting terror. That means the Israelis putting some limits on their settlement activity. I think you do things like that. It's very positive. The reason why I don't think it's possible to settle the deal yet, to settle it all, is not because of President Trump. It's because the Palestinian leadership is not ready for it. So I think when there's a new leadership, if that happens under President Trump and there's new leadership that's more reform-minded and moderate, then I think it's possible. Until then, it's not.
All right. The detractors out there seem to be more worried about what Melania is wearing than they do actually the positives from this. What have you seen so far? I mean, he's been to Saudi Arabia, he's been to Israel. What are the, if you were to list a couple of the things that we need to take note of, what would they be?
First of all, that he went to the Western Wall in Israel is very important. I think it's the first sitting president to now it was considered a private visit, not an official visit. He didn't have the prime minister with him. That was controversial. But he and his wife, and Ivanka's daughter, went to the Western Wall, and I think those pictures are dramatic, and I think it shows support for Israel. I wish, he's not going to do it, it looks like, that he would support that that he would move the embassy, Israel's embassy, to West Jerusalem. He's not doing that. But I think those pictures are very good. I think him speaking to the Arab leaders in Riyadh is very good. I think everything has been very positive, and I think his rhetoric has been very positive. I think what the challenge will be when he leaves the Middle East is concretely how he follows up on some of this. By the way, I didn't add this about Iran. He also needs to be be tougher on the Iranians on their ballistic missiles. He should maybe work with the Israelis and the Saudis and the other Arab countries to put together a regional missile shield, and I think he should threaten to shoot down the Iranian ballistic missiles if necessary. But I think the pictures at the Wailing Wall is probably the most dramatic so far, and him being feted so nicely in Riyadh. Interesting.
Well, look, you obviously are very knowledgeable about this. Is there a website we can send people to?
Of course. Thank you for asking. It's www.jinsa.org.
JINSA.org.
Or JINSA.
All right, JINSA. All right. Dr. Michael Makovsky, appreciate it very much, sir.
Thanks for having me.